My name is Dr. Penny Thompson Kruse, and I'm the professor of violin at Bowling Green State University. This video is designed to provide practical tips for preparing the Ohio Regional Orchestra Recorded Auditions 2019 that are to be uploaded to accepted by May 31st. Violins are to prepare 2 scales, 3-octave A major and 2-octave F major, 1 etude, Mazas Opus 36, Book 2, number 39, and 1 excerpt from the first violin part of Schubert's Second Symphony, first movement, measures 11 to 47. We will start with the etude. Jacques Mazas was a French composer and violinist who studied at the Paris Conservatory. He wrote numerous etudes for his students. The focus of Mazas' 39th etude is intonation in thirds and string crossings. A solid but supple left hand frame and flexible right wrist and fingers are required. It is important to be sure you are doing fingerings that allow for string crossings throughout the etude. In the first measure, establish the pattern with 1-3-1-2-4-2. Follow the indications for open strings and fourth fingers when marked, as in measure 3. This etude lies mainly in first, second, and third positions. However, there are 2 shifts to 5th position and 2 extensions to 4th position in the last 3 lines. Practice the string crossings with open strings. There are 2 main patterns used: separate triplets and 1 separate down bow followed by 2 slurred up bows. In these patterns, give 1 impetus from the bow to propel each group of 3 notes. Pull from the elbow joint for the first note of each group and use wrist and fingers for string crossings of the other notes. Play in the comfort zone of the bow, just above the middle. The indication in the music, leggero ma non saltato, means light but not bouncy. Place the right hand, wrist, and fingers in what I call the neutral position, neither pronated or supinated, with all the weight to the index finger or to the pinky side of the hand. So this is pronation, and this is supination. If you are pronated, you'll get stuck in the upper half of the bow and tend to bow from the shoulder. Pay special attention when the string crossing patterns change from the middle 2 strings to the upper 2 strings, as in measure 6 and back in measure 8. In measure 26, the pattern is played on the lower 2 strings. At the end of measure 4 and 26, you skip the D string as you come back to the A string. Exceptions to these 2 main string crossings types appear at the ends of measures 4, 8, 12, 16, and 26 with scales or arpeggios. And the 3 slurred notes in measures 40, 42, 44, and 46. Let's work on the hand frame for the first measure. If all the notes were on the same string, the shape would be half, whole, whole. When you move the third and fourth fingers to the lower string, you may feel some strain in your left hand or find that your left fourth finger is flat. Violin pedagogue Kato Havas talks about a giving hand. This should not be confused with what many teachers call the pizza or the pancake hand. We are not supporting the neck with the palm. In the giving hand position, you allow your left thumb to come farther under the neck, rotating your elbow and letting your palm relax. This will bring the pinky closer to the fingerboard. I find it extremely helpful to practice this etude with double stops. Major thirds and minor thirds are the majority of the intervals used, but there are also larger intervals. When playing a major third on adjacent strings, the spacing is close. When playing a minor third on adjacent strings, the spacing is wide. This is exactly the opposite of how we play sixth. Minor sixth, close. Major sixth, wide. If you do not pay careful attention to these spacings, your intonation will probably be hit or miss. When playing thirds, I use the finger in the middle to help me with the spacing. The first measure of the etude is close, wide, wide, close. The second measure is wide, 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 close. A way to combine your double stop practice with the string crossing patterns is to play two separate notes followed by the double stop. What may seem in tune separately may fall short when heard as a double stop. A particularly challenging passage for intonation starts on the fourth beat of measures 20 to 22 and measures 30 to 32. Think about the finger spacing if all the notes were moved to one string. So we would have an F natural and a G sharp, so that is surrounding the E. And if we move the G sharp over to the A string, it's so then becomes, and then you cover a fifth, move down and do the same thing. I want to point out the fingering in measure 22 and 32. The shift to first finger on G in the third beat allows your second finger to be available for the B. So this is beginning of measure 22. Shift. Another place to check for intonation is measure 34. The indication in the fingering is to stay on the middle strings A and D. So you're in third, second, third, and then you shift to fifth. This will require you to swing your elbow farther towards the E string to get around. When you go back to playing separate notes, remember to keep your fingers down as if you were playing a double stop. That will save you time and improve your intonation, but remember not to grab with your left thumb. Tempo. I recommend somewhere between 112 and 132 or faster for the quarter note. But warning, faster is not always better. If your intonation, tone, or string crossing accuracy is negatively affected, choose a slower tempo. Dynamics. There is no printed dynamic at the beginning. I suggest somewhere between a mezzo piano and a mezzo forte. The sforzandos are important, and they all fall in an up bow. Often they are followed by a piano. They should be executed with vibrato as well as a right hand attack. I would add a sforzando in measure 30, fourth beat, as it appears in the similar passage in measure 20. Additional dynamics to note are the diminuendos in measures 33, 35, and 39, and the crescendo in the third and fourth measures from the end. Make sure the double stops and chords in the last two measures are in tune and have a ringing tone. To work on the double stop at the downbeat of the next to last measure, practice playing the beat before and only playing one note of the double stop. Then practice the other one. Then put them together. Start the chords from the string and vibrate. I will play the etude now in a slower tempo for practice. Note that I will play with the printed dynamics, articulations, and the part and amount of bow needed for a faster tempo. Notice the concise movement of the left hand. The excerpt from Schubert's Second Symphony shows how well you can play spiccato and shift cleanly in a fast tempo. Once again, there needs to be flexibility in the right hand, fingers, and wrist. Make sure your bow is at a 90-degree angle to the string. Very little bow is used, especially in pianissimo. There is always a space between the first quarter note and the quarter note tied to an eighth note. When you begin the excerpt, these two notes will be down, down. This small retake also occurs when the rhythm comes after continuous eighth notes. The second time you have a quarter, followed by the quarter tied to an eighth, will come out up, down, because we hook in the first eighth note after the tie. The third down bow in a row is not a retake, but needs to be separated by a space. So here is the opening bowing. There is a sudden dynamic change from pianissimo to fortissimo at letter A. The dynamic change at A should be done by adding more bow. Sforzandos are to be played within the printed dynamic. Remember to use vibrato to make them more resonant. Always start from the string and stay close to the string throughout. Don't force the bow to bounce. Schubert should sound lighter than Beethoven. Make sure all of your half steps are closed. Block out patterns within one position. This excerpt uses first through sixth positions. Measure 39 can be played in third position or in fourth position, whichever you prefer. In measure 46, practice shifting to a perfect fifth with your second finger covering both A and E strings. Your finger will be somewhat flatter. String crossings are also challenging in this excerpt. I recommend adding a slur in the first beat of measure 45 or in the first beat of measure 46, but don't do both. Adding one slur will make the string crossing easier in measure 46. Use the slur to take you to the upper half of the bow. Make sure to vibrate the last note and make it ring. My tempo is half note equals 138. I feel the beginning in 1 bar per measure, but be careful not to rush. I will now play through the excerpt in a slow practice tempo. forget to listen to a recording of the full orchestra playing this excerpt. You will play better if you know what the rest of the ensemble is doing and can hear it in your head. Best wishes and success in your audition process. If you have questions or would like to schedule a trial lesson, please feel free to email me at krusep@bgsu.edu.